Yes. We have problems. Yes.
Yes, now it works.
Great.
Someone had to unlock me, apparently. All right.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Larissa. Thank you, Flavio. Nice to be here.
So go ahead because we are eager to hear you talk about how do teams collaborate best. So go ahead. This is your stage.
All right. Thank you so much. Indeed. So, how do teams collaborate best? There's actually another title on the agenda. There was some kind of swap up somewhere, but we're agile, right? We don't mind these small hiccups. We just go with the flow. And in this case, the flow says that we discuss how to collaborate successfully with teams. That's something I would love to discuss with you. There are a lot of people, a lot of companies interested in this topic because sometimes you see the advice that we should just pick the best people. If you look at how to create great performing teams, then the advice is usually just hire the best job candidates. Well, that's a bit silly, to be honest, in my opinion, because very often that is not the privilege that we have. We cannot be like those in sports that simply buy the best athletes in the world. We have to make do with the great people that we already have. And frankly speaking, performance is often not in the individual persons. It is in the collaboration with people that we have on the teams already. So we have to play the cards that we are dealt with, and we can turn, I think, any group of people into a great performing team. Actually, there is quite some research confirming that. So that's what I want to focus on for the next 18 something minutes, how to turn a group into a team. As I said, plenty of organizations have looked into this. Google has done extensive research. Microsoft with IDEO, the design firm. Their professors, Amy Edmondson and Richard Hagman, all very famous. I sort of collected their insights, mixed their findings, and I came up with four dimensions, basically four paradoxes, you could almost say. The first one is diversity versus team culture. When I go around doing workshops, which is something that I love doing, I sometimes ask people, what is the single most determining factor for great performance of teams? And very often I get the answer, diversity. Diversity is super important for performance of teams. But what kind of diversity? That's where the interesting discussions start. Sometimes people suggest a mix of genders, mix of backgrounds, whether it's culturally, racially, whatever. And yes, there is a correlation between those physical appearances and performance on team. If you mix things up, that's good. But correlation is not causation, as scientists know. What is actually the causation of a great performance is cognitive diversity. That's the diversity in our heads. It's not how we look, but it's how we think, how we approach a problem solving, basically. So some suggestions for cognitive diversity would be the level of lean agile experience on a team, who is business oriented versus technology oriented, who is a generalist versus who is a specialist. The generations, baby boomers versus Gen X, etc. That means often a different kind of thinking to a different approach to problem solving. There are some scientific findings in terms of cognitive diversity. The most famous one is the Big Five model, is used by psychologists all around the world. As one of the dimensions, they have, for example, extraversion. Are you an introvert or are you an extrovert? That matters in terms of how you approach problems and how you deal with group dynamics. So that is the first key, you could say, to team performance, having diversity of people on a team and have an emphasis on the cognitive diversity, for sure. For ethical reasons, it's important to have a mix of genders, a mix of cultures, etc. But what matters is how people think, how they approach problems. Then, on the other hand, we don't want things to be too diverse. In my book, Management 3.0, I call it inclusive diversity, a term that I picked up from complexity science. We don't want things to get out of hand in terms of diversity. There has to be some cohesion on the team. So what binds them? What makes us say this is one team, the thing that connects everyone? Um, I advocate having a shared identity, for example. What is it that people would love to print on T-shirts as a proud a way of showing off what team they belong to? I sometimes said if people don't want to wear a T-shirt with the company logo on it or the business unit logo on it, you fail the T-shirt test, basically, because people apparently do not want to be associated with that company or with that business unit, with that product. And there need to be shared rules for the people on the teams, so whether it's responsibility or reliability, the way we operate together. There needs to be things that we agree on together. Beware of teams selecting their own members. That could lead to dysfunctional behaviors where everyone practically looks the same. I have experienced that in the past, where I was employee 31 at a company, and the previous 30 people were all single white males, basically, from the same city. That was not much cognitive diversity, I think, among that group of primarily students from the same university. So that's the first scale, you could say. On the one hand, diversity. On the other hand, the something that binds them together. A way of approaching that would be coming up with a work agreement or a team charter, as some call it. The expected rules that the teams need to play by. That's the first one, cognitive diversity versus team culture. But I have another one upcoming, psychological safety versus creative tension. Psychological safety is the newest word, the newest buzzword, you could say. I heard it again this morning at other Santander events. Super important concept. It means that team members dare to take risk without getting harmed, without feeling that they are being punished for trying something. It should be okay to run an experiment that fails, as long as the experiment is set up to be safe to fail. When people do not speak up, then you have a problem. Speaking up is only the first step. Amy Edmondson said, the true test is how leaders and others on the team respond when somebody actually speaks up and says, this is not the right thing to do, or I believe we should be doing this. You will probably call me mad, but I truly believe we should be doing this experiment. That is safety, psychological safety. It is highly correlated with curiosity, vulnerability, without experiencing hostility from the team or team leaders. I sometimes do a little experiment. It is hard in workshops because you have people in one classroom usually that don't know each other, so it's very difficult to already start with psychological safety, but you can make some first steps. That's what onboarding and team building exercises are for. I have people answer questions that are relatively safe to answer, but still make you think, like, what is the dumbest thing you've ever done? That's one of my favorite questions to share. Something stupid you have done in the past and that you're happy to laugh about. That's something to consider, coming up with opening questions for any group that feels to them as if they're stepping slightly out of their comfort zone, but still safe enough. And that the first step towards psychological safety, I think. And then, on the other hand, again, a sort of a paradox. We need psychological safety on the other hand, on one hand. On the other hand, we need creative tension. We need some people to disagree. I'll give you one example of one of my favorite TV series of all the time.
You must definitely know. argument. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. It's just contradiction. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. It's not. It is. You just contradicted me. No, I didn't. Oh, you did. No. You did, just now. No, nonsense. Oh, but this is futile. No, it isn't.
Well, that is, of course, Monty Python, as you saw. I love the argument sketch. This is a very simplistic way of disagreeing with each other, obviously. But sometimes you should disagree with each other. There's sometimes, just for the sake of arguing, you should have a disagreement, just to make it safe for everyone to voice their opinions. For example, in Cynefin, the sense-making framework by Dave Snowden, one practice is called ritual dissent. It is the idea that when someone has a suggestion, an idea to try with the team, that person turns around facing with their back to the group, and then the team is going to try and attack it in every possible way, just intentionally not agreeing with the idea. Why? Just to make it safe to argue with each other, and just to make it, just to be sure that you look at things from lots of different perspectives. And the person who came up with the idea turns around with their back towards the team, just so that they don't feel personally attacked, basically, with all the arguing that is going on. It's an interesting exercise to try. So teams should have strong opinions weakly held. That's another phrase that I like using myself. I always have opinions, as some of you might have seen on Facebook and Twitter. No matter what, I will have an opinion about it. But my opinions are weakly held. I have a very big weak spot for evidence. If you have evidence, no worries. I will change my opinion about something. That was the second paradox. On the one hand, we need safety of the team. On the other hand, we need them to argue and create tension with each other. Basically, it is not contradictory. It's a paradox. It is possible to have both. And then the third one is about purpose and meaning. It might be obvious, but there needs to be a clear goal. There needs to be, in any work group, something to strive towards. It is in the very definition of team, actually. If you look in the dictionaries, you'll find every definition has, as part of the definition of team, that they have a goal, something to work towards together. That means that team members need to know how they make an impact. What is the vision? What is the purpose of the company and their team? One thing that I like doing, as some of you may know from my work on managing for happiness and management 3.0, I have a game called Moving Motivators that is intended to tie people's personal motivation to whatever the team is offering as the job, as the work to be done. Some people are motivated by status, other people are motivated by acceptance or honor. One of the motivators is the goal itself, the purpose for which the team is working really hard, I hope. That on the one hand, what is the goal of the team? On the other hand, we also need personal meaning. What is it? What is it in it for me as a person? Because everyone seeks meaning through their work. Everyone wants to have a happy life, great experiences, and to be honest, the time where someone had a job for life is gone. It's long behind us. Nowadays, we have jobs that should help us achieve self-fulfillment, basically, and self-actualization. Yeah, that means that we need to connect that what the job offers, what the team offers, to our meaning in our lives. I'm a big fan of this model, the Ikigai model. That is a Japanese concept. It is a Venn diagram of 4 circles. It says, as a person, you should figure out what is it that you love to do, what is it that the world needs, what is it that you can be paid for, what you can get a salary for, and finally, what is it that you're good at? Where can you develop your talents? And then the intersection of this Venn diagram, there's your Ikigai. That is the reason for being. That's what ikigai means. The reason for your being. What is the purpose as a human being? I sometimes, tongue in cheek, refer to it as make fun, make money, make progress, and make a difference. That is my summary of ikigai. Great reflection exercise to do yourself. I also have 12 steps for happiness. You can download that poster if you want from the Manager 3.0 website. It's a great reminder to do things that make us happy as individuals, as team members. Every now and then, go outside for a walk. Do some exercise. I run every day, for example. No negotiation. I run every day. That keeps me happy. Some people meditate. I was at a company in Spain not long ago where they had a meditation room, and they call it the Alegria room. It's a wonderful, wonderful room to set up for your employees. So make these things possible for team members, and then you will make a contribution to their team purpose, but also their personal meaning. So again, it seems like a contradiction, but it is a paradox. We have the team's purpose on the one hand, but also our personal meaning in life. They should go hand in hand. The last paradox that I found in the research by Google and Microsoft and those others is the supportive context versus self-organization. Obviously, the company needs to offer teams everything they need to be highly performant. There needs to be suggestions for team structure, there needs to be transparency, there needs to be feedback cycles with management, etc. One discussion that often pops up is what is the preferred team size, for example? Well, it obviously depends on context. If you have a football team, then it should be 11 people, duh. But on average, I say the research says it should be around 5. 5 plus or minus 2 is usually what researchers come up with. 4.6 was offered by Richard Hackman, Professor Hackman, at some point. I don't know how you do 4.6, maybe one part-timer on the team or something. But again, that is around 5 people. Seems to be the sweet spot. You could have rules for that in a company, or rules of thumb, you could say. Well, team size, we prefer to have 5 plus or minus 2. And then the other things such as transparency and feedback cycle are parts of what I call the supportive context. And then on the other hand, of course, we rely on self-organization. I don't think I need to explain anything there because this is about agile. You have so many suggestions from other speakers about self-organization, I am sure. Just one thing that I'd like to point out is there is a great team canvas that should help teams self-organize, define their roles and their values and their action points, etc. Worth checking out if you're about to self-organize as a team. And as I said, I found all this stuff in these resources by Google, by Microsoft and IDEO, Harvard Business Review. There's so much stuff out there about well-performing teams, but these are basically the paradoxes that I found, not contradictions, good paradoxes. Diversity on the one hand, culture on the other hand. On the one hand, safety, but also arguing, that's good. We need the team purpose, but